Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Welcome to this edition of the Exceptional Advice Show. So, Tristan, what are we talking about today?
Today is going to be all about price discovery.
I just had this image of like digging up treasure.
Treasure. I got Sherlock Holmes and a bag with a $ sign on it.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I got the.
I don't think I can make that in a thumbnail though. So.
I got the pirate digging for treasure.
Okay.
So price discovery. What does this actually mean? What do you reckon it means?
What do I reckon it means? I don't think I've ever looked at an actual definition for this. Let's have a crack. Price discovery is the methodology derived. No. Basically, you feel out the market and you discover where your price sits among consumers, whether it's high, low, about right, based on their reaction.
Okay, I think that's reasonable. So I might have a crack as well. So price discovery is the act of taking your value to people who wish to use that value and discovering what they are willing to pay for it. So it's a mechanism of demand meeting supply to a degree.
Yep, I'd agree.
But we're specifically talking about price discovery when it comes to value add or service-based business, right?
Yes.
So price discovery for Red Bull, I don't know why I always use Red Bull as an example.
It's for fun. We'll roll with it.
I mean, it's a common brand. People know it. They put a lot into advertising, but it's certainly different to being a service-based business. Although Red Bull does try to say that they add value. So what's the value that Red Bull adds?
Energy and wings.
Right. Okay. So it gives you wings. It gives you extra energy, right?
Yes.
But even so, there are a lot of drinks that have caffeine and stuff in them, right?
Yeah.
Maybe not taurine or whatever the hell they put in it. But we're specifically talking about service business where there is a value add, where there is value being delivered to a client, which is going to be subjective and objective. So I think it has both of those measures.
Yep.
So before we go into price discovery, let's just say that I don't think most service business, and I have advised literally hundreds of them, I don't know the actual number, but hundreds across, I don't know, so many different denominations, property conveyancing firms, inspection businesses, law firms, and the obvious ones are our favorite, which is advice firms, and that should be you listening to this. And what I can say is that almost none of the ones that I've encountered, and I mean like 99.99%, have actually gone through a real process of price discovery. So in other words, they don't really know what clients will pay for what they do, in my opinion, in my experience. So then how are they setting their price?
Just winging it.
Are they winging it? Are they just making it up on the spot?
No, for the most part, I doubt that.
So what do you think they're usually basing it on?
A roundabout figure based on what everyone else is doing.
Right. So quite often pricing in a service business will be based on what the competition is charging.
Yep.
Okay. And of course we work with a lot of accounting firms as well. So how do they typically price?
Hourly rates to varying degrees.
Yeah. So in other words, that's cost-based pricing, right?
Yes.
So they say, what's it cost for us to deliver this? How do we structure that? How do we put that forward? And so they build it into an hourly rate. Okay. So in other words, you've got competitive pricing and you've got cost pricing. And by the way, if you're an accounting firm, then typically that ends up being a combination of both, doesn't it? So the hourly rate. So who sets the hourly rate then? Well, the hourly rate is competitor based, right? So our hourly rate is similar to our competitors. If when you charge more than that, then we're expensive. And compared to what? I'm not entirely sure. So it's kind of interesting. So that they're putting their price based on, either of those things. So we're going to use some slides that, I've got hundreds of slide decks from all the public speaking engagements I've done over the years. They're now kind of sitting there very lonely with our COVID times, right? So we can pull them out for this stuff as well. So let's go with this one here. So we've got the three methods of pricing, essentially, right? So we've got the first one, which is cost-based pricing. So basically you have your production cost plus a markup gives the price. Well, what's the markup and what's the price? Well, often, as we talked about just before with things like accounting firms or whatever, or law firms, the price is also competition-based. And I guess they've got similar production costs, but not always the case. So you get the idea. And then the last one there is value-based pricing. So it's the value to the client, the customer, and that's the price. Now, I always ask this question of clients, right? No matter what business they're in. Which one would you like to be in? What do you think the 100% response rate has been so far?
Value-based.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because everyone says they would like to be in value-based pricing, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they are, right?
Yeah.
So another question that I'll typically ask, let's stick to accountants. We talked a bit about financial advisors in our last episode. So typically if I'm speaking to clients about pricing and I say to them, would you like to be a price taker or a price maker? So first of all, what does that mean, Tristan? I think everyone intrinsically gets it, but let's be explicit.
Yeah. Well, let's take competition-based pricing for an example, right? You're sort of taking what's there as a result of market averages or whatever subset of the market you're taking, and you're taking that and using it, whereas the more value-based method would be price making.
Yeah, so I think that's pretty straightforward. So, it is to a degree competition-based pricing. And honestly, most of competition-based pricing is underpinned by cost-based pricing, right? And so it's a matter of if you are following either of those methods, then you are being determined, the price is being determined to you, as opposed to value-based pricing, which is you determining the price. Now, that only goes so far, doesn't it?
Sure.
Because I could charge $1 trillion a year for my service.
Okay.
How many clients may actually be able to pay $1 trillion for my service?
1, 2?
Yeah, I think there is a few people in there who could, but would they give up that percentage of their wealth to get my input?
Very, very doubtful.
So, in other words, there is a crossover between the value that I believe and the price I choose, and then the willingness of the market to accept that.
Yeah, agree.
Okay. So this is really more value-based pricing. So the one thing I can say is if you are in value-based pricing, the only way that you could have set your price, if you are in value-based pricing, is through price discovery. So in other words, charging for what you do at a higher rate and seeing what the market does.
Yeah.
Makes sense, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So let's use one of these other little slides. So we normally talk to advice firms and then through them, and this is just one thing that I get to talk about for myself. I'm in a fortunate position of talking to lots of advice-based clients about their clients. So I'm advising through my clients hundreds of businesses at any one point in time, right? So you get to sit through hearing about lots and in your own right, talking to our clients about their clients. Yep. So we get these scenarios thrown at us all day long, right? And by and large, most small business are in the service space, even if they don't think they are. And this is also something important to note. You may think you're a commodity-driven business, but you're probably not. Anyway, we'll get to that in a sec. So imagine we're talking about an online business, right? Mm-hmm. And the reason I choose an online business is you've produced a course, okay? So you've spent the time, you've made all the videos and the guides and, you know, that kind of stuff, all the chapters and homework and whatever else is in your course. So in other words, once you've produced that and it's stored digitally, what's the variable cost per unit from there?
Sales process plus like hosting cost, I guess, if that ever changes. But
so yeah, maybe the hosting cost, maybe your LMS learning management portal or whatever charges some extra per sale, but relatively, your variable costs are almost zero, right?
Oh yeah, super low.
Okay, so it's why we're using this one as a clean example for a base case. So let's imagine you produce that course and then you go and take it. So let's look at the left side over here. So you go and take it to your audience, right? Oops, I didn't mean to skip. You take it to your audience and you put it through the sales process and you make 100 sales and you're selling it for $20, right? Well, that's pretty straightforward maths here. So 100 sales at $20, you make $2,000. Okay, so your gross profit, we're not talking net, so your gross is 2,000. Okay, so what about option 2, where you're saying, let's sell it for $500. And so you take it to the same target audience, you take them through the same sales process, and instead of selling 100, you sell 10. So that's only 10% of what you sold before. But you actually generate $5,000 in gross revenue. Okay, so this isn't a trick question. Which one would you rather have?
The 10 sales.
Okay, so in other words, lo and behold, through price discovery, you've found that you make a lot more money selling far less units at $500 a sale, right? Then you do it $20 a sale. Pretty straightforward.
Yep.
That's price discovery in its most simplest form, right? Is that the end of price discovery?
No.
So what might you do next? Let's just carry out this little thought exercise. How could you continue with that price discovery? What might you do next round?
So you've got split testing you could do.
Okay.
So, the 500's going well, but what if you knocked it to 450, or what if you bumped it to 600?
Okay, exactly. So you could drop it to 450 and you still make 10 sales.
Yeah.
What if you drop it to 450 and you only make 8 sales?
Then it's too cheap.
So sometimes it's kind of interesting when things are too cheap, you actually sell less. And there's interesting price points. And, we used to run lots of events and sell all kinds of online products as well, right? And so we've discovered all of these things in practice. We'd actually sell far more tickets to certain events when we charged $200 than when we charged $49. It was far more easier. And then, interestingly enough, sometimes if we charged $2,000, we'd actually make it easier than if we gave it away for free. So these are all interesting things. But price discovery is the process of finding out through the market what's actually going to take place.
Yep.
So if you're in a service business, do you have an increasing variable cost with every additional client?
Increased variable cost.
In other words, what's your main cost when you're in a service business? So let's take advice. Let's take an account. Let's take the accounting firm, right?
Yeah.
So if you're in an accounting firm, do you need more human resources if you've got 200 clients than if you have 10.
Most probably, yes.
Yeah. By and large, yes.
Yeah.
There's a certain degree of energy expenditure required for every single client engagement, right? Irrespective of what the size of that engagement is. So there's kind of a fixed and a variable cost for every single client. And as you sell more, both your fixed and your variable costs increase.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So unlike the comparison we just used, so let's bring that up again. So this one's straightforward. I don't know. Whatever it costs you to produce the product, right? However you value your time or whatever in producing the course. But we can remove that because this is pretty straightforward. Whatever your cost was, you made $3,000 more in the second example. Like excluding maybe the $20 for whatever the variable pricing was. Actually, it would be the opposite because you've only sold 10, right? You've taken it to the same audience. So your variable cost would actually be slightly lower. But anyway, you get the idea, right? Mm-hmm. So leave that one up there for a sec. So let's imagine you're an accounting firm, right? And I know no one charges $20 for anything in an accounting firm. You couldn't get anything for that, right? But let's imagine you were doing the same thing. So you were charging clients $20 to do their compliance work versus $500. Well, it's pretty straightforward. You would still much prefer, in fact, it's exponentially greater the financial impact this has. Because in the second example, you've only got 10 clients. So not only are you producing at more than double the revenue, right? Mm-hmm. But your cost is significantly lower. You only got 10 clients versus 100 clients.
Yeah.
And yet, almost every professional services firm that I've seen, including accounting firms, price their business based on competitor and cost.
Yeah.
And yet they end up having more clients, right? More cost, and they haven't actually done any accurate price discovery. So, what's a typical scenario for an accounting firm? Okay, you're undercharging for what you do. Okay, so what happens if you increase your price by 50% and 50% of your clients go? But they're the 50%, but out of that 50%, it's the majority of your smallest clients where your margin was either low or you were actually losing money. Because it's typically what happens, right?
Is it the 80-20 rule people talk about?
Yeah, 80-20. So 80% of your profit or, your benefit comes from 20% of your clients.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And I'd say that ratio really applies only if you're running with cost-based and markup-based pricing, right?
Okay, that's interesting.
So once you actually move to value-based pricing, the 80-20 rule does not apply at all. So what you should be doing is looking at your margin per engagement, right? So typically we don't, actually I'm going to come back to the accounting firm model here again, right? So I think this is hilarious. So apologies if I'm smack talking you because you're an accountant. I'm not. I care about you guys. I care about the quality that you deliver to your clients. And I'm only talking about this stuff because I want you to be better positioned to give exceptional advice. And you can't do that by doing too much of the wrong stuff for the wrong people and not charging enough for it. And the only way for you to go through the process of creating the most value is if you accurately price discover. Okay? So what are the typical fears that we get when we're talking to accountants about changing their pricing and charging more?
I mean, it's largely the same fears across the board, right? Like you raise your fees. Well, what are you going to do if people leave because of that? What if people, challenge fees in, when you're talking to them about raising them? What if they leave because of it and then you see them again somewhere on the street or shopping?
Yeah, I love this. What happens if people leave? Hang on. the only way price discovery works properly to get your business to the optimum threshold for you and your best clients, right? I mean, the ones that you can add the most value to, then what's required for that to take place? So let's bring that little example up here. So what was required for 90 people to do, right, between version 1 and version 2?
Not be there anymore.
So say no.
Yeah.
So the only thing required for you to have 90%, well, okay, it's not going to be 90% less work. So let's say this is an accounting firm. It's not going to be 90% less, because typically your bottom clients are the ones that leave when you go through, this process of price discovery. Or it might be the top clients that are the most painful to deal with and therefore cost you the most energy, and the ones you're losing the most margin on if you actually priced it anyway. Okay, but irrespective, what's required for this to take place? 90 people saying no. Interesting. So if you're going to run a value-based business that charges appropriately for the right people to get your profitability right, to put you in the most optimum place to create the most value for clients, then what's required? Some people to say yes, but less of them, and some people to say no. And this again is what price discovery is. And how do you know where your optimal margin is at? So what happens, for whoever's listening to this, just do some maths on your own client base. What happens if you doubled your fee and 30% of your clients said no? Do the numbers. How much less work are you doing? How much more margin are you creating? Now, I'm not just saying this because I want you to go and charge people as much as you possibly can. And by the way, this is another objection that we get as we go through this process. And look, I get the psychology of it. And you can feel free to disagree with me as much as you like, but I'm going to acknowledge the psychology. And the psychology is this: I want to give people access to what I do and my level of advice. And by putting the fee up, I'm going to price a whole lot of people out. Well, and that makes me a what? So we talk about self-worth reflection. So what are people afraid that makes them?
Oh, no one really wants to price people out intentionally. But, that's kind of with the subtext that they're doing it for nefarious reasons. Like, I want to raise my price so I make more money. And that's the driver. But
yeah.
There's a lot more to it than that. So,
you're talking about there from a client's point of view, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So, but this is something that the actual business owner has to confront. If they're putting their price up, what does that make them? A bad what? Person, right?
Well, yeah.
Right. So in other words, beliefs and your ego then becomes a reflection of what you're doing instead of, and becomes your prison. So this is what I know. Businesses that don't accurately price discover have less productive relationships with clients. They're able to deliver less to the clients that they have because they're doing too much and too much of the wrong thing for the wrong people. It's very simple. So again, coming back to the proverbial accounting firm, every single accounting firm I've ever talked to, right, all of them, from senior managers, all the way down to accountants and whatever, they all wish that they had more capacity to go deeper to solve better problems for their clients. They all want to do that. We don't have time because we're running around doing all of this other stuff. Well, guess what? Okay, the only way you get to truly become transformational for your clients is if you have the resources and the capacity and the headspace. And what does that require? It requires price discovery, and it requires you getting past your own ego. Charging more for what you do, for the value you create, requires you to get past this feeling that doing so makes you a bad person. So, quick question for you, Tristan.
Mm-hmm.
Can everyone afford to engage with us?
No.
Okay. So, I like working out the ROI of once we've worked with a client for 18 months and then doing a little ROI over a DCF 10-year period, projecting forward. So what's the general ROI that clients get from that in that first 18 months in working with us?
I don't even know the number, but it's good.
Yeah, it's. I don't think we've had one less than about 8,000% ROI, right? So the return is awesome, but there's an equation, right? There was the propensity to pay and capacity to pay. So yeah, when they work with us, their numbers go up incredibly. And we're trying to share with you part of how that happens, right? I can't work with everyone, for starters. So not everyone can afford to work with us. Just from a cash flow perspective, it's the old chicken and the egg. Do I mentor people sometimes?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So I probably do maybe 150 mentoring. It's a little bit less these days because I've now you can see in my lockdown beard that I'm rocking at the moment. There's a few grey hairs in there now. So I've decided that I'm using this exact same methodology for myself, right? So I don't want a lot of clients. I want to be able to have a very serious impact for the ones that I work with. And because of that I still want to be able to provide input to people who don't fit with that. Now, I still have requirements for this, right? You don't give away your energy to people who aren't willing to invest their own energy in getting something back. But I still mentor people, right? How much do I charge for those mentoring meetings, Tristan?
Nothing.
Okay. So my point out of this is there is a difference between me running those mentoring sessions and me running a business. And if I conflate the two, I have a misunderstanding about what I'm doing. And, so again, there's something that you hear me, I'm just catching you as you're managing to, what's that stuff that you've got in there? What's it called?
It's G Fuel.
It's G Fuel. Right.
What G Fuel? Drinking? No, never.
So not Red Bull.
No.
G Fuel. Okay. So are you more amped now?
No, I'm not even close.
So no wings?
No wings.
Obviously, you've got the wrong product then, don't you? Okay. Anyway, side little detour. So again, coming back to all of this, price discovery happens when you go to the market. But more importantly, it can't happen unless you've looked in the mirror properly and you've dealt with your own BS.
Yeah.
And that's really the issue. That is primarily the issue why most service firms haven't accurately price discovered. And we hear every excuse in the book, A recent example of a client, as I said, we work on, many, many, many of these all of the time. They are a property inspection firm. So, building inspections, pest inspections, for financing and, as part of the whole process. They also do stuff as part of staged funding for, project developments and stuff like that. But the majority of their business, property inspection for residential sale. And we're looking at that. Their margins are crap. The owners are only they're doing a lot. They've got like a reasonable number of employees. This isn't just a one-man band. I think they've got about 15 employees, something like that. But they're not making any dollars. Well, it was pretty easy to see why once we start getting into things. So it's very simple. These guys are competing with, other businesses that are tick and flick. All right, much more tick and flick, online, technology driven. These guys are way more relationship driven. They get into the project, the property a lot more. They go into more detail. They help the clients actually understand what they're doing and why they're doing it. They give advice around it. So in other words, far more relationship driven. And yet they're pricing to match with the no service, tick and flick technology company. So pretty straightforward, no price discovery. And so what are the typical objections that we hear from all kinds of businesses? Well, it's the same thing. People won't pay that. Well, how the F do you know? How do you know if people are going to pay more for this or not? I hear it all the time. If we put our price up by, I don't know, the average inspection, like $900. So we put it up to $1,400, whatever, right? If we put our price up to that, people won't pay it. So we're not going to do it. Okay, well, how do you know? And so this also goes back to the last episode, that we talked about, Tristan. What are the real financial inputs in people's lives and in their business? So what's the real input here, right? So if we're talking about that example and they're saying, well, no, we can't charge that because people won't pay it, so we're not going to do it.
Yeah.
So what kind of decision is that? Is that a rational decision?
No. That's more of a. It's like a. I can't think of the word. It's like a misunderstanding of the actual value you're providing.
Well, it's a misunderstanding of value, but it's also, yeah, absolutely. It's also an emotional decision, isn't it?
Yes.
So in other words, their own perspective and belief about their value, their own self-worth issue is what's causing the problem. So the input isn't anything else we can do in the business. It's not dropping their cost.
Yeah.
So we don't come in this from an accounting angle doing business advisory for these clients and tell them to drop cost. No, we need to actually look at making sure that whatever they're doing, they get margin on, right? So cost is only one mechanism for margin, and it's usually the weakest, especially in a service business. So if you're a financial advisor or an accountant and you're advising your business clients around things, how the hell can you even pretend to be a financial related advisor giving them advice around these inputs if you haven't done this yourself? Right? You can't. So this is the other thing, right? You letting your own excuses and your own fear and your own biases get in the way of you taking a logic-driven, rational approach that doesn't make you a bad person. It actually means you'll be a better person. It means that you will be giving your energy to the right people, being the most transformational. It means that you're honoring your responsibility to your clients, the best clients, and to your family. So you're telling me it makes you a good guy working 6 days a week, right? Or whatever your equivalent is. Working 6 days a week, not earning enough, and not having the capacity to actually go as deep as I'm talking to you about on the Exceptional Advice Show and Tristan's talking to you about here, because you can't. That doesn't make you a better person. It means you're letting your own weakness of character get in the way. And yeah, I am giving you a hard time, but I'm giving you a hard time through my own personal experience. I have to look in the mirror, and I've had to ask myself these same questions before. These days I've got far fewer clients than I had in any of my service businesses, and I've operated lots of different kinds of them over the last 25 years. But none of my clients before were getting, 10,000% ROI on their time spent with us. So am I having far more impact now? Yeah, hell yeah, I am. And that's the question that you need to ask yourselves, right? If you want to be a value add business, then what it does is it allows you to create more value. But you can't be in a value add based business. You can't add even more value to the clients you already have if you don't go through price discovery and if you don't get past your own BS. So, clients won't pay that, so we're not doing it. Well, how the hell do you know? So we put the price up. Guess what happened? They meet budget for the first time, right? They go away on a holiday for the first time. It's amazing stuff, isn't it? By the way, did some people say no?
I'm sure they did.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah.
And I know you hadn't been actively involved in that one. Yeah, they absolutely did. That's what's required in price discovery. Now, have we finished yet? No, we've just started that. All right, so we're going to go to using another little, this is probably my favorite, right? And I can't believe it's my favorite because I freaking hated this stuff when I was going through school and university. Right, statistics. By the way, I got pretty good at statistics because I ended up failing in my undergrad degree. I ended up failing all the undergrad subjects, and the only way I could pass and not end up doing an extra 2 years because I couldn't do the following year's prereqs was if I went and did the advanced major in statistics, and it was a full year subject. Anyway, remind me to tell you that story some other time, but I passed and I got through. So I hated statistics, but I actually learned to love them a fair bit. Maybe that's a reason why I like going through all the data now. Anyway, so most of you will recognize this. What's this called, Tristan?
Ooh, pick me. It's a bell curve.
Why is it called a bell curve?
Because it's shaped like a bell.
Oh, wow. Standard something or other?
Standard deviation.
Okay, so what does it mean?
So the most people in the middle and the some people on the sides. So the further out from the middle is the further that you deviate from the standard or the average.
So you went very micro in your explanation. Let me add in the macro. So essentially what standard deviation is about is it's generally statistical analysis of population sets, right? So we're talking, it can be used for all kinds of things, but it's generally used with regards to how people respond to certain things. And we're certainly using it in that sense now, right?
Yeah.
So generally speaking, most people will fall in where?
The middle.
And then there will be degrees of variance from there, where the further you move from the middle, the lower the number of percent of people. Either way, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it forms a bell because the further away you are, right, it drops off on both sides.
Yep.
Okay? That's kind of my very simple explanation, but it's just about probability. So what have we got here? This is a bell curve, standard deviation curve for price sensitivity. So any maths majors in there that were listening to our explanation, yes, you can feel free to say whatever you like in the comments below. And if you want, you can come on the show and talk about price discovery if you like. So, in other words, how sensitive are people to price? So I always use this example. All things being equal, in other words, the client's actual scenario and your actual translation of value, right? All things being equal, then people will follow a normal standard deviation curve when it comes to their price sensitivity. Okay? So in other words, you can have two twin brothers. They both inherited exactly the same amount of money. They've both gone through very similar life experiences. They're both married to twin sisters. And, they've both got the same amount of money in superannuation or retirement investments.
Do they both have twins as well?
Yeah, they do. Let's just take the example a little too far, but yeah. And so you could meet with both of them independently, right? Or even together for that matter. And so you could have one of them, you say, here's what we're doing, here's how we're going to do it, we're going to structure your assets like this, and here's how we'll engage you for the next 12 months. And we're going to charge you, I don't know, pick a number, Tristan. How much are we charging them?
$4,300.
Wow, you are too cheap. All right, $4,300. And you can have one twin say, yep, no problems, where do I sign? And hand you the dollars, right? You could have the other twin go, what? How do they act?
$4,300 for that. Wow, that seems expensive. Here, let me write you a nice email outlining my concerns.
Outlining why I'm going to go and see someone else who only... I'm going to go and see my uncle's brother's nephew who is a financial advisor.
And also the twin.
Yeah. Right. Okay, we can leave the twins out of the examples from that one, right? I think we've milked that one. So my point being that different people will respond in different ways. And it's always interesting when we're helping our business clients go on this journey of price discovery, because I'll have some people literally look at them and go, yeah, of course I'm going to pay you. I always knew you were too cheap, right? And you can see that they're still nowhere near the point where they would be encountering price sensitivity on the bell curve, right? And I always tell clients as we're going through this, some people are going to look you in the eye and go, yeah, this is still too cheap. Right? Just brace yourself for it, because it will happen. I can't imagine someone saying, yes, it will happen. Anyway. And then on the flip side, you've got someone else go, "Whoa, that is no, I'm not getting it. I'm out." Okay. And interestingly enough, as you're going through this, a lot of the time you'll be surprised, because some of the people who you thought that valued you the most are the ones that stab you in the back as you have if you have an explanation. By the way, this is just part of the journey. But always as part of this process, the quality of your engagements gets better, because what it does is it actually gets you to translate which ones are valuing your relationship more. And so the engagement gets better. And that's a whole other conversation about price tension and why it's so important in a service business. The more people pay you for what they get, the more they value it. Okay? And there is a diminishing return point, but we'll talk about that with our last slide a little bit later. So let's go back to the bell curve now. So in other words, where are you sitting on the bell curve? So where do you reckon most of the service businesses we've ever taken a detailed look at sit, Tristan? Where do you reckon they are?
Probably a mix between that second and third segment there.
Yeah, so I can't get my mouse to show up on the way that we're doing it for you today, but essentially you have, all right, so if you're looking on the far left side, most services business are probably actually somewhere to the left of that second indent, right? That's where your competition-based pricing is. And we know this because, generally speaking, as we go through and we increase price, right, most of the time what we discover is that we've hardly had any no's. And that's because we're still on the flatter part of the curve, right? So where would you prefer to sit in terms of where you're charging? So where do you reckon, Tristan?
You'd want to be on the right of most people.
So I would say that you can build a profitable business model that allows you to add value anywhere from the dark blue color onwards.
Yep.
Okay. So where you then go from there will be determined by a whole range of different business questions that you may need to ask yourself. But if you want to work less and you want to produce more and you want more capacity to be able to go deeper with your clients, well, guess what? You probably haven't done accurate price discovery. And by the way, this is a journey, right? So you go on a journey of discovering this over time. Now, what happens if you get better at translating and articulating your value? So what happens if you go from being a good advisor to being exceptional? Right, so you tune into the Exceptional Advice Show. Yes, I'm going to take this chance to give ourselves a plug here, which I'm always amused when people do that. No, we've got no sponsors. We've got nothing to sell you. We're not looking for clients. We're sharing this stuff because we want to and we'd like your input. Doesn't really matter who's listening to it. We hope you are. We hope you're getting something out of it. But the reason I'm doing this show with Tristan is to help us not only clarify our thinking, but also because I want to be able to share this, because I know I can't help everyone, right? And I know not everyone's going to be coming to work with us. And by the way, we generally speaking have a waiting list anyway, right? I don't need to worry about those things. So what happens when you listen to the show and you use your intuition more and you set aside your own fears, you learn about the real inputs to what controls finance, you understand how to get clients to make behavioral change to change the key levers in their business, in their finances, in their thinking, in their fulfillment triggers, in their relationships, in their life. So after seeing you, their lives get exponentially better. What happens, right, when you're doing all of that and you're better at articulating it to people? What happens to the bell curve?
Well, the bell curve kind of stays the same.
Actually, it doesn't.
It doesn't?
No. So what happens is, right, so the bell curve is representing, so remember I said this to you before? Right, yeah, cool. So we bring the bell curve up. We should probably actually graphically represent this with a nice little animation thing. But anyway, what happens is this is a bell curve, all things being equal. So in other words, all things being equal between those two twins.
Sure.
Well, what happens if you were better at drawing out the value for every individual client and translating it to them? So the client's price sensitivity stays the same, but the actual bell curve as it relates to you now, for all of the clients you interact with, has moved to the right. So another way for me to say this, right? Imagine if I go back, 20 years ago, and I went to the same clients then, and I tripled the fees, right?
Sure.
And I did that with the knowledge I had then, right? So in other words, and I know this for a fact, a whole lot of those clients would say, no, you're too expensive, right? A whole lot of them. Certainly a whole lot more compared to if me, knowing what I know now, went to those same clients and tripled the fee. Because what would I do? I would draw them out. I would help them understand the value more. I would articulate that value and how it translated to their life. So a lot more of those people would say yes. Does that make sense?
Sort of.
What bit doesn't fit for you? Normally you get everything I'm saying, so we better go back over this.
Just the all things being equal bit. If your value translation is better.
Okay, so everyone is priced. Everyone will. So the standard deviation curve for the population set will remain the same, right? But what's not equal is where they're interacting with their advisor, right?
Oh, so the point on the graph where you're located is what moves. Is that what you're meaning?
Well, no, I would say that, in other words, the whole curve, so the bell curve and the standard deviation is the same. It's just where it transposes on the actual price number changes, right? So the whole thing moves to the right.
So your price axis is spinning or moving up in numbers sort of thing.
Yeah. So in other words,
okay.
the deviation is still the same, right?
Yes, just on bigger
It's
prices.
just that the midpoint might have been $5,000 for my capability of drawing out their value and articulating it then.
Yep.
And now it's $50,000.
Sure. Okay. Yes. I understand now.
Okay, cool. So if you have any questions on that, please hit us up in the comments. I hope I've helped you understand that. So in other words, the better you get at drawing people out and articulating value, the higher the price point will be on that standard deviation curve. So what we find is that, we have clients go about doing this and they put their price up, but at the same time as they're doing it, they're getting better at articulating value. And so a lot of the time what happens is they put their price up and no one says no. What does that actually tell you in price discovery? You're still too cheap.
Still
Right?
too cheap. Yep.
Okay. So what is required for this to actually work is for some people to say no.
Yep.
And I know it's scary and you may have personal issues around people saying no and no one likes to be rejected. And, there's all of these things you have to deal with. But if you truly want to be an exceptional advisor, creating exceptional outcomes for clients, I'm sorry, but if you're doing it for everyone and allowing everyone who chooses to say yes, then the two are mutually exclusive. Okay, it can't happen that way. You can't get more capacity to deliver more without some people saying no. And that's the beauty of accurate price discovery. Okay, so I'm gonna use this to go into my last slide here, which is probably my favorite one to stick it to. Right? So, look, I love you guys. I care about advice. I really do. I'm not giving you a hard time. I don't think I'm superior. I'm not. I've learnt all of this stuff the hard way. I'm sharing this with you because I want you to be more empowered. I want you to do a better job for clients. I want you to be exceptional. Not good, not great. I want you to be exceptional. Stop ripping your clients off by charging too little. Okay? Stop ripping them off by charging too little. Because if you're charging too little, then too many of the wrong people are saying yes. Too many of the people that don't actually value you enough are saying yes. Because you don't have the capacity to be able to go deeper, to be more impactful. Because you're not honoring your responsibility to those people. And by the way, if you still want to be able to give away some of your time and energy, then find the right people to be able to do that with. But just remember, that's not the business. That's you. So just like I do, do about 150 mentoring meetings a year, and I'm not charging for them. But that's not my business. That's me giving away my time, my energy, my resources. It's not the business. And I certainly don't do that for people who have the capability to pay. I do it for people who don't, generally younger people who are growing, who are looking to grow. And by the way, that doesn't mean they get it for free. They still have to earn it. And I don't mean they do tasks for me. I mean they have to put my input into action. I don't help people who just want to turn up and get conversations, right? Action's what matters. So stop ripping your clients off by charging too little. So what actually happens there, if we're looking at the little beautiful PowerPoint that I created myself, no graphic designer in this one, just all me. What happens is, as you charge more, the perception of value goes up. So on this whole chart, you'll notice that, as we go along to the right, that red line, the perceived value, you notice it's actually going up the whole way. Right? So it's still increasing because price perception or perceived value is going up to the right. So it's going up the whole way. But you also have a diminishing return. In other words, less people will continue to pay that price. So if we look at the bottom axis to the right, it's purely price. And if we look at the up axis, what's that one's called? X and Y.
X and Y.
Yeah. Which one's the horizontal one? Is that the Y? X? I don't know. Anyway.
Vertical is Y.
Yeah, the vertical. Right. Okay. Yeah, I thought it was Y. That's good. So Y is number of clients continuing to say yes, right?
Yes.
So the perceived value is still going up. The revenue that you would be receiving is still going up. But there is a threshold, right? And this is where price discovery kicks in. So if you look where the line starts coming down, where we've got referrals written, right? And then where it meets the price threshold or the price line, the price arrow, the black one. Generally speaking, that's where I think the sweet spot is. So if you can get clients to pay up to that point where you're starting to get a diminishing return, and probably that little red line going down below. I'm just representing this graphically. So obviously there's a bit more to it when you look at the maths and the testing when you're going through this process, but this is the sweet spot. So you need enough people to say no. But the thing about this is, if you're in a service or advice business, do you want clients to really value what you do? What do you reckon?
Yeah, you do.
Okay. Well, guess what? Price is one of the best mechanisms for doing that. So if you're not charging people enough, they're not taking you seriously enough. If you don't get a client of an, business advisory, coaching, consulting, whatever, if you're not getting them to a pain threshold, in other words, there is discomfort involved in them finding the money to be able to pay you, right? If there's not some discomfort involved in that, then where the hell else are they going to be finding discomfort in paying for something? If it's not in what could be the most valuable relationship they have with an accountant, financial advisor, because if done properly, it is the most transformative place, you can go, right? The same thing when a client's coming to me, if they are not experiencing some price pain in being able to pay us, then they're not going to take it seriously enough. And I'm not charging enough. So stop ripping your clients off by charging too little. How do you actually figure this stuff out? Price discovery. Being willing to have a conversation and being willing to have people say no purely based on price. Okay, so what do you reckon?
Yeah, that's good. I mean, I didn't have anything else I wanted to cover on this anyway. I think those slides were kind of covering everything I had down. So if you wanted to add.
Look, I mean, obviously this is a big topic, and
Yeah.
we could literally delve into this. I mean, when we're working with people, it's to get to mastery point on this, we spend a lot of time. But I think that should have given you a reasonable guideline set. And I wanted to challenge you with a whole bunch of this stuff because I hear it all the time. Well, we're charging more than what other businesses are doing. That doesn't mean you've gone through price discovery. And just because you are charging more doesn't mean that's relative to where your intersection with that bell curve is. In other words, what your price point is, because you may be articulating value better. And you've only really done that if you've changed your price and you've had enough people say no. Okay. And the only way to get capacity is for you to get both, increase revenue and reduce what you're doing. That gives you the capacity to actually move to becoming an exceptional advice business or service firm. I mean, it's kind of interesting. These same things apply, right? We talked about the property inspection firm. We talked about, and we didn't this episode, we did a previous episode with another firm that's in manufacturing but high-end stuff in construction. Well, guess what? The first thing we're doing is getting them to do price discovery. They're putting the prices up. They've already put their prices up. Well, guess what? No one said no. Oh, well, what does that tell you? Right? You were way undercharging, and now you've still got some room to actually go with this. What you have actually discovered is the market values you far more than your competitors, and there's absolutely reasons for that. I mean, it was patently obvious to me as an external party looking at what they were doing, but that's not always obvious to you. It's not always obvious to your clients, and there's no way you can really be advising your clients from a business advisory or personal financial point of view objectively if you haven't gone through this process objectively for yourself. Now, it's not easy to do on your own. It's why everyone needs advisors, in my opinion. So if you need help to be objective on that, find someone to give you good input on it. Right? But make sure you learn the lesson so that you're able to pass it on to others. Okay, that's it for today. As always, please remember, we're doing this for your benefit. Yes, it is for our benefit in fulfillment. We're not seeking sponsors. We're not looking for clients. That's not the reason for what we're doing. So if you've got value out of this, please do me a favor. If you'd like us to continue, all that's required is just a little bit of love, right? A little bit of affection. Yes, I'm challenging you, but I promise that comes out of compassion and a desire to be of service to you. So just give a little bit of support. How can you do that? Chuck us a like. Make some comments. Ask some questions. Give some input. Challenge us. Argue with us. Debate with us. Have an interesting conversation so that we can all move forward on the pathway to becoming more exceptional advisors. Okay? So obviously share the content if you feel so inclined. But the best thing that I enjoy the most is a comment just to say, hey, Baz, thanks very much for going into this with us. We really appreciate it. All right, everyone. Thanks very much. Take care, and we'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Cheers.